All this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from Drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. Today's discussion is about a publication in American Heart Association's online journal. It is a news about a study that was presented in AHA conference about a couple of days ago. It was on 25th. Today is 27th. The study says that for the first time in vitro and in animal studies, the researchers have found out for the first time the mechanism that is responsible for cardiotoxicity by the spike protein. And they say that this is the reason that the heart damage occurs in severely ill or hospitalized patients. I think it is understandable that they did not touch the vaccines discussion. And instead, their statement that I would like your comment on, they have an interesting statement in there, which when I read it, it kind of seemed two opposing statements connected together. I would show it to you a little later. Let's start the discussion. What they're saying is, for the first time, they found out how the spike protein directly damages the heart tissue without binding with the ACE2. This is the important part. No ACE2 involved, just the spike protein and the heart, and the damage occurs. Let's see how. So this is Drbeen.com. There is a link in the description of this video, which is to the plan for one-time payment to get access to another 900 premium lectures on Drbeen.com. This is one. This is the study. This is American Heart Association's newsroom part of the site. And if you see here, coronavirus spike protein activated natural immune response, damaged heart muscle cells. So we'll go over this study. Beautifully done study. I do not fully agree with their conjecture or the discussion about the vaccine or a statement about the vaccine. We'll see. These are some other links that are here as well. Here we have Dr. I believe he is the one, Dr. Zixiang Lin. He is the lead researcher on this study. And some more links over here. Now, before we go further, this is also interesting to keep in mind. This study, I had discussed this study about 4 months ago. This is the presence of the signs of cardiac damage in children after receiving the vaccines. So we have done this discussion before. I brought it here just for the possibility of also thinking that if spike protein can cause damage in COVID patients, then maybe the patients of vaccine injury that may have heart damage, this mechanism may be applicable there as well. So with this, let's start. I'm going to go over my drawings and we can then go over the study itself. So these are the gifts for humanity. They're continuing. Here is what they saw. This is now very important to note. They proved in this study that this is only SARS-CoV-2 spike protein and not any spike protein. So they actually used another coronavirus, which is a human coronavirus. They used that spike protein from that virus as well in these tests. And they found out that the spike protein from the human coronavirus did nothing to the heart tissue. While the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, SARS-CoV-2 is also a coronavirus, but only this spike protein causes damage. So here, let's look at what was the damage before we look at the mechanism. They say in their discussion, spike protein is directly toxic to heart tissue. And here there is a spike protein, SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. What they observed was in vitro, in a petri dish, they observed that when they cultured the spike protein, not the whole virus, but the spike protein, they had attached that spike protein to a pseudovirus and then they had sent that in. So when the spike protein was cultured with the cardiac tissue cells, the cells became bigger and they became large, which in actual heart will mean heart will grow, heart will enlarge, and heart will fail. So that is one big observation they had. They said in lab, spike protein caused heart muscle cell enlargement compared to the other tissue, heart tissue, where spike protein was not present. So that is a big problem here. Then, what else did they observe? They also injected these spike protein viruses, pseudoviruses, pseudo SARS-CoV-2, not the actual SARS-CoV-2, in mice as well. And they found that in the mice heart. Now, consider this, that these mice did not have the ACE2 on their heart cells, the ACE2 that is human ACE2. So just for a quick aside here, there are mice available for testing that have been modified genetically to express human ACE2 on their cells. These mice on which they did the test did not have human ACE2. That means the chances of spike protein to bind with the mouse's ACE2 was not there because spike protein does not bind to mouse ACE2. Even then, mice's heart had the following problems. Number one, cardiac dysfunction occurred. Hearts failed. Number two, the hearts enlarged. There was hypertrophy of the cardiac tissue. That means the tissue enlarged, it became thick. We do not want the heart tissue to become enlarged or thick. That reduces the amount of the space in which the blood can be collected. It increases the oxygen demand. There are so many issues, functional issues with that thick heart, and it fails. So they saw that the hypertrophy occurred or heart enlarged. They also saw that heart remodeled. This is really bad. Remodeling means, and I was discussing this with the Cool Beans on our walk this Saturday. If you do not know, we do a Zoom walk every Saturday, 7 p.m. Pacific time. And I was mentioning that it is important for all of us, especially nowadays in this stressful time and in this evil pandemic time, that we make sure our hearts are not continuously under stress. Because as the heart continues to churn and pump and palpitate and have arrhythmias, it starts remodeling itself. It starts reshaping, just like our other muscles and tissues reshape. That remodeled heart becomes very difficult to bring it back. So here, remodeling occurred. Hypertrophy occurred, remodeling occurred. And then inflammation was observed. So this is not a process of binding to ACE2. Now, I want to give an idea of other conjectures that are out there as well. Some studies have shown various mechanisms. The mechanism that I'm going to discuss today from this study is not the only mechanism, but it is an important mechanism. So, for example, other mechanisms that have been out there in studies or conjectures or hypotheses are, for example, ACE2 and spike protein binding in the heart, causing disruption of cardiac endothelium and disruption of the cardiac muscle. Infected cells, heart has ACE2, so direct infection of the heart cells, and they talk about that in this one. Circulating antibodies, autoantibodies, damaging the heart, and that is a discussion which was done for the first time by the German scientists for vaccine injury. Thrombosis, which is also a cardiovascular problem, endothelial vascular damage, reduced oxygen levels because of the respiratory system issues, which then cause oxygen reduction, which in turn causes the heart to fail or have stress because there is more pressure in the heart to pump more, plus heart itself is getting less oxygen as well, so it is getting damaged more. Increased burden on the heart. Then CD147 engagement of the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, and that causes red blood cell clumping. Blood cell morphology changes. I've done these studies that the cells shape change, and that causes difficulty in the cells to move in the blood vessels. That increases viscosity of the blood, that causes damage to heart and blood vessels and other tissues. Inflammatory markers present, interleukins, chemokines, mitochondrial damage that in turn causes the oxygen utilization issues, ATP utilization issues, and tissue damage. So there are many hypotheses. There are many theories, some proven, some not. We would see a new one today. Now, also please keep in mind, severe COVID doesn't happen in everyone. Vaccine injury doesn't happen to everyone. So keep that in mind. I don't want you to be nervous or scared. I want you to be informed. So back here. So now, if you just wanted to know what happens, this is the final summary slide, and then you can disengage if you want. So here it is. What they saw was, when they placed SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, not the other variants, the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein activated Toll-like receptor 4 on the innate arm of the immune system. What does this mean? Innate arm of the immune system are the first responders to the foreign material. The cells that are part of the innate arm are macrophages, dendritic cells, neutrophils, NK cells, etc. There are some more specialized cells as well. Out of these cells, macrophages, dendritic cells, but not NK cells, these cells have Toll-like receptors on them. These cells have little arms on them. These arms have little hands. Those hands are to recognize various patterns around them. Imagine these cells are moving around in the universe of your body, and they're touching everything around. And that the system that is touching, the hands and the arms that are touching, these are called pattern recognition receptors, or PRRs. Toll-like receptors are a type of PRR. These little receptors are especially sensitive to lipids and lipopolysaccharides. So these guys become activated by spike protein, but only SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. I'll keep repeating this because this is very important. When the macrophage or dendritic cells, TLR4 is activated, then what happens is it starts releasing inflammatory molecules. Interleukins, remember interleukin 8 and interleukin 12 and interferon, does it do colony forming units and so on? So a bunch of interleukins are released, which cause inflammation, which then cause damage to the heart tissue. This mechanism, this pathway of the damage is ACE2 independent. So you put spike protein in a mouse where ACE2 is not necessary or will not bind, even then that mouse would have cardiac failure or heart damage. Why? Because of this mechanism. Now, please remember, in this mechanism, at least in this study, I showed you various conjectures. There are many other studies. In this study, they're not talking about spike directly binding to the heart. They acknowledge it, that there are other mechanisms that are proposed for ACE2 binding or spike binding to heart tissue proteins. This study is about spike binding with the innate arm cells releasing inflammatory molecules, which in turn cause damage to the heart tissue. This is the basic mechanism. And that's it. If you just wanted to see the summary, here is the summary. Spike of SARS-CoV-2 only causes direct tissue toxicity of the heart tissue by using innate immune system cells. This mechanism is not observed by the spikes of other coronaviruses. This is a specialty of this spike protein. I do not know why, but that's what it does. This is also a mechanism that is ACE2 independent. This is not ACE2 binding that is doing it. This mechanism is also antibody independent. It is not that the innate arm is causing the acquired arm to become active and that is attacking the heart. That would also attack the heart because innate arm is becoming active. This is innate arm activation causing local inflammatory markers, which are then activating other natural killer cells or other innate arm cells, which are then attacking the heart tissue cells and damaging them. Okay, now I'm going to continue with the details. So as I said, only SARS-CoV-2 spike. How did they do? They actually added another human coronavirus spike. That was the HCOV-NL63. They brought that spike in as well. And interestingly, that spike did no damage to the cardiac tissue. And it is actually understandable. We have so many human coronaviruses in our throat. 86% of the population has coronaviruses in our throat or in our oropharyngeal areas, nasopharyngeal areas. We don't get cardiac damage. So they confirmed it, that other spike proteins do not activate the immune system in the heart and do not cause damage to the cardiac tissue. Then what they did was they brought the SARS-CoV-2 spikes into lab mice. And what they observed was, these are those mice, these are not human modified mice for human ACE2. These were natural mice with the natural mouse ACE2. Even then, the presence of spike protein caused cardiac tissue damage and serious damage to the mice. Which proves, what does it prove? It proves spike protein did not need to bind with the ACE2 to cause the damage. Then what they did was, they said, all right, let's see if this is happening in humans as well. So they took the biopsy of a deceased COVID patient and they looked into their heart's tissue. And what they found is really interesting. It actually made me, it gives me chills to saw their observation. Their observation was, and before I tell you the observation, let me back up. In healthy hearts, this does not happen, what you're going to hear. In this patient's heart who had died of COVID, they saw an increased number or amount of toll-like receptor 4 proteins and the spike proteins. Now, spike protein, one could say that if a patient has been in a severe state, then the virus is everywhere. So spike protein can be seen everywhere. But activation of toll-like receptor system, innate arm, more than the other arm. That means there would be direct damage to the tissues because innate arm's function is to kill the pathogens and to kill the cells. Whichever thing comes in front of it, it's going to demolish that. So this heart was actively demolished by the attack from the innate arm, which was started and triggered by the SARS-CoV-2 spike proteins. So they found the trace of that or the proof of that by finding TLR4s and spike. Spike, of course, this is a virus, so it would not be present in healthy people. TLR4 is also not found in healthy hearts. That was interesting and worrying. So then they talk about the mechanism. Last 2-3 slides now. They talk about the mechanism. So now why does this innate arm start? Why is the spike there? Why is this immune system reacting in the heart? That is what they do not know. They know spike is there. They know immune system became activated, which nobody knew before, that innate arm became activated. We all were conjecturing, and actually there are studies to prove it, that there are autoantibodies. So that may also be the mechanism. That is actually the mechanism. In addition, they found just through the innate arm there is an attack. And so what did they find? So why did this happen is what is a conjecture. They said it is possible that heart tissue becomes infected by SARS-CoV-2, and those infected cells, they express the spike antigens on their surface, and that causes the innate arm cells to become active, which is the normal mechanism. So here is a heart cell, here are the viruses, this is the expressed spike protein or the pieces of epitopes of spike protein. Here is the innate arm becoming active, and that then causes the problem. So this is a conjecture. They are seeing that this happens in terms of cell and protein. They do not know why it happens. Then the second possibility, this is also from their discussion, they say maybe the spike is in the heart because spike got spilled in the heart, or they use the word shedding of the spike protein in the circulation from the area of infection. And now that spike has gone to the heart, and then it is now attacking or becoming a reason for the immune system to attack the heart. So that is their second conjecture. Third is not a direct mechanism they have given, but they have simply said, we are also aware that there are studies or research that have shown that spike protein causes problems with the cardiovascular system in general, which will mean that when the blood vessels are not working correctly, then blood pressure would go up and down, which would then put stresses on the heart, which can then cause damage to the heart. So here I represented that. So here is a SARS-CoV-2. We know, so this is not this study before the other studies, and I am expanding on it. They simply said, we know that there are studies that show that there is a cardiovascular system problem, and that causes stress on the heart as well. We know that spike protein can bind with the ACE2 on the heart and then cause ACE1 and ACE2 imbalance, and that causes pro-inflammatory state to become activated. Plus, when the spike protein binds with the ACE2, it reduces the nitric oxide functioning or production of the cell. Now, when the nitric oxide is not produced correctly, it is a reactive oxygen species neutralizing agent. So the ROS neutralization doesn't occur, and the cell starts becoming damaged. So just the binding of this spike protein to any cell's ACE2 can cause that cell to die or become troubled. When the spike protein binds with the endothelium, that is the blood vessels, surface cells, inner surface cells. I made it from outside, but imagine this virus is inside and it is binding here. When this spike protein binds with the endothelium of the blood vessel, that is the cells of the wall of the blood vessel, it causes the same problem there as well. Nitric oxide production is reduced, which in turn causes the smooth muscle. So under the blood vessel walls, there are smooth muscle cells whose job is to help dilate and constrict the blood vessels to control the blood pressure. So when the blood cells, endothelial cells, are dysfunctioning and not producing nitric oxide, then the smooth muscle cells that are under in the walls of the blood vessel, they do not function correctly, and the blood vessel loses the ability to expand and constrict to regulate the blood pressure. It cannot regulate the blood pressure anymore, and that causes sudden drops in blood pressure, that causes palpitations, that causes weird heartbeats, that causes inflammatory state of the endothelium, because when the ACE2 is occupied, then ACE1 is dominant, ACE2 is less dominant or less functional. It also downregulates ACE2. The result is there is more inflammation. When there is inflammation inside the blood vessel, that causes thrombosis as well. So clotting would occur, thrombosis would occur, constricted blood vessels would occur, less blood flow would occur, which would then promote further thrombosis. The result is blood clots would occur, plus low blood pressure would occur, or high, depending upon what is the state of blood vessel and what is the state of clots and how much viscosity has changed, which would put stresses on the heart. So heart is under attack in so many ways. Less oxygen because lungs are not working correctly. Viscosity of the blood is changed. The nitric oxide production is changed. The antibodies are produced. The spikes are attacking the heart. The innate arm is attacking the heart. It's a chaos in the body when the spike protein goes and does these things. So then, in winding up, once again, what did they find? They found that spike was directly toxic to the cardiac tissue through the innate arm. 1, it was only the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein that did it and not the other human coronaviruses. 2, and 3, it caused the cardiac tissue in vitro and in mice. It caused the cardiac tissue to enlarge, hypertrophy, become big, have a demand for more oxygen, was poorly functioning. In the mice, the heart failed. In the dish, it became bigger, the cells became big. That is what they saw. This is the first time a study that demonstrates these mechanisms to such detail and connects the dots is there. So here, it is actually an interesting study. Chicago, July 25, 2022. I'll just very quickly show you how this study is. And I hope that their full manuscript and the full study would be forthcoming in a few days. This was their presentation and the news about their presentation and the mechanism that they revealed in their press release. So with this, thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description. You can use Dr. Bean's link to purchase Dr. Bean plan, which is a one-time fee. It is not recurring. It is one time. And there are 900 premium content in addition to these videos on YouTube. So take advantage of that. If you would like to support further, you can become a patron. All the links are in the description. You can become a patron. You can become a member on Substack or Locals, or a member on YouTube, or many other ways. You can use PayPal as well. You can buy me a coffee too. So with this, thank you very much. And I would see you tomorrow. So a few questions here. Linda says, which variant? So I think that they have not disclosed the variant. Their whole manuscript would tell us. Let's see. So Tiffany says scary stuff. So I want to keep balancing it. I said that in the beginning too, but sometimes people skip around in the video and they catch one statement or two. I want to balance it. Not everyone who gets COVID becomes severely ill. Not everyone who gets vaccine becomes severely ill. So those who become ill, these are the mechanisms that may be at play. But this is for sure, spike does it. And SARS-CoV-2 spike, for me, what is really curious is that what the heck is wrong with this spike that it does it? What is so much of a difference that others don't? Roy says, why would this not happen to everybody? Histological damage to heart muscles. The reason is our immune systems. So when our immune system binds with something, then it becomes active. It is possible. And fortunately, in majority of us, when our immune system binds with the spike proteins, it just doesn't care much. It doesn't become overwhelmingly active and start attacking. It is very similar, and I've been saying it for about 2 years. It is very similar, just like allergies. Not everyone is allergic to, let's say, peanut butter or peanuts. And why not? We do not know. There is genetic material. There are so many factors. But only 20% of the people are allergic to various substances to which the remaining 80% are not. Similarly, fortunately, it's not even 20%. In the case of COVID, 20% become ill, very similar to allergies, and then 4 or 5% end up in the ICU, and a smaller percentage die as well. This virus has that tendency. We are seeing it. Robin says, if you appreciate this lecture, please show Dr. Bean some love by clicking the like button. Yes, like button. Only click once, don't click twice. Denise, they have not disclosed the variant. Hopefully, they would disclose that in their manuscript. Susan says, doesn't the vaccine use only part of the spike protein? No, that's not true. The vaccines, most of the vaccines that are mainstream, they use the whole spike protein. It is slightly modified and the genetic material is stabilized, but it is the whole spike protein. This paper is in violation of Facebook's misinformation. What? This is paper that is printed in American Heart Association's newsroom. And if I go here, this is American Heart Association site. I do not know what Facebook is up to. So I wanted to have let me share my screen. Just one thing. I'm going to put a statement in front of you, and I need your opinion of that. So here is the statement. I stopped when I read this. Let's read it. They said, our data show that the spike protein from SARS-CoV-2 causes heart muscle damage. That's why it is important to get vaccinated and prevent this disease. But isn't the vaccine itself also a spike protein? So anyways, this is in American Heart Association. So Springfield says, thanks. Is this true of spike proteins produced by vaccines as well? No. So their study, I mean, we have to be fair and correct to the researchers. As I just read their statement, they're saying actually go get the vaccine. And their study is for the SARS-CoV-2 and severe patients. I don't think many researchers who want to be published in the mainstream go near the vaccine issues. I think they will over time, but not yet. So Michael says, does it translate to vaccines as well? Look, it translates to spike protein. For example, they did say spike protein from SARS-CoV-2. However, they did not present any mechanism of the SARS-CoV-2. They actually plucked the spike proteins of the SARS-CoV-2 and put them on a different variant Vero virus and infected the mice with that and had the same results. So eventually they're talking about the spike protein. However, I saw some media outlets that categorically said it is SARS-CoV-2 that does it. So I think it depends upon the leaning and biases they would color it one way or the other. But if you read the actual paper, which I would request you all to do it, the link is in the description. If you read the paper, they actually took the spike protein. If I can actually show you right now. Okay. Search for Vero. Here. To investigate the impact of the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein on the heart, researchers cloned the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein and the NL63 spike protein, human coronavirus, into the AAV9 viral vector. They didn't use the SARS-CoV-2. They only plucked its spike protein, put it on a AAV9 virus, and sent that virus in the mice. So that is essentially equal to sending spike protein. The AAV9 viral vector was delivered into lab mice to activate the spike protein in the heart muscle cells. They found that the AAV9 mediated the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein and not the NL63 spike protein caused heart dysfunction, hypertrophic remodeling, enlargement, and cardiac inflammation. This is directly from the American Heart Association site. So if I understand this, it's not about SARS-CoV-2. They're not saying that the N protein from the SARS-CoV-2 or let's say some other antigens of the SARS-CoV-2. It is the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2. Skyfrog says, this sounds like what I have. Skyfrog, get well soon. Please let me know if I can do anything. Doug, I'm so sorry. You have asked this so many times. Can we discuss the supplement day skipping? Yes. Yes. I'm so sorry. I forget. Not that I don't want to do it. I forget. Randy says, does the amount of spike protein? Of course, the more the spike protein, the more immune system activation. Sometimes immune system just becomes dysregulated and it doesn't care for the offending agent. That is what happens. The cytokine storm is where immune system doesn't care anymore. It just triggered. So Brad says, how can they differentiate between it being COVID? No, they cannot. They are just saying we took the spike protein from the SARS-CoV-2, put them on another virus, threw that virus in a mouse and see what happens. Or we plucked the spike proteins, cloned them without the virus and put them on the Petri dishes. So this was not a virus. So they use the word SARS-CoV-2 as well. However, in reality, they are talking about the spike protein. I'm sure that they're using the word SARS-CoV-2 and the media is using that way as well. And some media has just actually changed it to COVID. And actually here, they say, it's very interesting. Their title, I cannot imagine what has happened to the medical coronavirus spike protein, activated natural immune response, damaged heart muscle cells. This is what they did. So anyways, I want to keep this small. Can you please do me a favor? Please like, subscribe, and share. Maybe share it with those who may have been having some cardiac issues. This might give a clue to their doctors for how to manage. Thank you very much, and I would see you tomorrow.